kuongea. Hi Adija, I didn't know there are such saloonists in Tehran. Now for Arwa to confirm that is the real hair of Adija, atasongea karibu aguse aone kweli it is natural. Before long, Arwa will be arrested by the morality police. I know it's not here in Kenya, so you don't know they exist. There's a whole branch of police in the Middle East called morality police. Number one, Arwa would not know why he's arrested. Because he will rush to court, then aanze kelele aseme what is wrong with this place. Mbona mnanisika? What did I do? The judge will ask Arwa, but you met Adija. Okay, I did meet Adija. But what did you tell her? I only appreciated how her hair was made. Okay. But you also touched it. Yeah, I was just trying to feel whether it's natural. Judge does not need any witness. Arwa is taken to jail immediately. Now, Arwa will only understand why is he in jail when he actually hears of the charge sheet of Adija. Now, this is how the charge sheet of Adija reads in Tehran. Madam Adija, you are caught breaking this land. Count one. Exposing. Count two. Disgusting. The third count, which is so serious, allowing Arwa to touch your hair. Knowing very well, Adija, that your hair is your private part. That's the charge of Adija in Tehran. That is when Arwa begins to understand that the hair of a woman in the Middle East is a private part. It is not private part to Jaluoni, not in Kisumu, not in Nyeri. Is it private, Queen, Elder? It is not. So even when we read the Bible, we need to understand the context of the Bible. I will now come to that famous one. 1 Peter 3, chapter 3, verse 4. Let not yours be outward adorning, with braided hair, decoration of gold, and wearing of fine clothing. I want to start with what Peter is not saying, which the people in the choir want to make us believe that Peter is saying. Number one, Peter is not saying that a woman should not wear fine clothing. Can somebody stand in this church and tell me that Peter is saying it is sinful for a woman to wear fine clothing? No, I want anybody who believes that that interpretation is what it is. Hata wana wa choir, you don't believe in your own laws because it's a law in choir. Let us go to Matthew, because I want to read it reverse. I want to start with what Peter is not saying in this verse. Peter chapter 6, verse 28 to 31. This is what it says. And why are you anxious about clothing? This is Jesus himself talking. Consider the lilies of the field, how they glow. Is marveling at the beauty of the flowers. They do not toil. Hawaendi kazi yoyote kununua nguo. Nor do they spin. They have no machines kutengeneza nguo. The flowers. But say to you that even Solomon, in his splendor, in his glory, was not arrayed like any one of these. Jesus is saying that the best that King Solomon could afford in terms of clothing could not match the flowers. Is this Jesus saying that human beings, particularly women, should wear rags? In other words, they should not do fine clothing. That is what is in Peter. That is what is in the law of choir. If Jesus is promising to clothe us with more beautiful clothing than King Solomon, are those rags? Are they not even better than what we would call fine? Is that what Peter is saying? Therefore, if God so clothes the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow is thrown into the oven, Jesus is saying, the life of a flower is so brief, but God cares so much to beautify it that much. How much more would it do to you that you have a longer life than a flower? He will not much rather clothe you, little faith. Now, the last part is even more beautiful. Then, do not be full of care, don't be worried, saying, what are we to have for food or drink, or with what may we be clothed? If you read this verse, is it saying that you should not dress in fine clothing? I said I'm moving rivers. I'm now at the gold, decoration of gold. If I have a gold ring, na nimeweka kwa hii mkono yangu nimekuja hapa kanisani, mimi niwe mwanamke niwe mwanaume, nitaambiwa nini? In the laws of choir, you don't have to have gold decorations. Because we are not worshiping. In truth, I want to ask you, can you read the verse of Haggai chapter 2 verse 8? That is a verse that nobody will come to this church during a stewardship week without reading. And they say, the silver is mine and the gold is mine, says the Lord of hosts. Because they want you to bring the most precious you own. If I came to this church today with a bar of gold, watu wanaleta ndizi, nimeona wameombewa hapa. Watu wanaleta miwasi wanaombewa hapa. If I came with a bar of gold, our elders hawatachukua. Nimesema mimi, what I own that I want to give as my tithe is a bar of gold. Will these elders not take it? Hawataiombea hapa mbele? No, I'm asking a question. They will take it. Are we worshiping in truth? If we are saying that now, because of this verse in Peter, God himself has condemned the gold. And yet, when people come here to preach on stewardship, that is the first verse they start with. To end the Revelation 4, verse 4. And around the throne, I saw 24 thrones. This is John. And the thrones, I saw 24 elders sitting, clothed in white clothing, and had crowns of gold on their heads. You are telling somebody that if you put on gold, it is sin. The angels in heaven are putting crowns of gold in their heads. If gold was sin, would the angels be putting them on in their heads in heaven? the 7 angels, 15 verse 6, same revelation. And the 7 angels came out of the temple, having 7 plagues, clothed in pure and white linen. I asked somebody, what is the uniform of the angels? Most people don't know. It is white linen. And were tied at the breast with golden bands. Sai mimi nikija na sampling bling yangu hapa ya gold. Simtanifukusha. You cannot sing like that. And those are angels adorning breasts of gold in heaven. Let me go to Exodus 32 verse 2. This is where I've seen some interpretations of this verse. Very crazy. Let me read it. And Aaron said to them, break off the golden earrings which are in the ears of your wives, your sons, your daughters, and bring them to me. Aaron is directing the Israelites to bring the golden ornaments they have to him. Verse 3. So all the people broke off the golden earrings which were in their ears, and brought them to Aaron. And so he received the gold from their hand and fashioned it with an engraving tool and made a molten calf. Then they said, this is your God, O Israel, that brought you out of the land of Egypt. It is this verse that is directly misrepresented in our church. That you should not have a golden ornament. It is a complete misinterpretation. It is not teaching in truth. It's not worshiping in truth. Who has a pen? Anipatie kalamu. Ana kana kalamu tu anipatie. Because Jesus himself is saying we must worship in truth. If we are reading the Bible, can we read it honestly and interpret it according to its meaning? This is a pen. All of you are seeing this pen. Nikikasirika sahi, niende nidunge elda wangu. Ai kalamu. Sawa? Will the pens be banned in the whole of this republic? That watoto cannot use pens, you cannot use pens in offices or anywhere. Because I used it, kudunga elda. Are you getting the argument? The use of gold in this circumstance, actually building calf was not the problem. It was worshipping it. So the problem was not with gold. But we want to use this verse to introduce our own rules of saying you cannot wear a golden ring because it was used to make a calf. If I have stabbed somebody with this pen, does the use of pen stop? It is my wrong usage of the pen that should be condemned, not the pen. If gold was used to make a calf, even making a calf wasn't a problem. The problem was worshipping it. Now let me ask you, would God in his own wisdom create gold and condemn it? So when we are reading the Bible, let us read the Bible in context. What we must avoid is to pick a verse, give it our own interpretation so that we can make our own rules with it. The Bible is for the teaching of the gospel of Jesus Christ and God. Full stop. The Bible is there for us to pick verses and make our own rules with it. I'm back to the braided hair. Hizi nywele yote yenye iko hapa kanisani, yenye zimefungwa na kitambara, yenye ziko short, yenye zimefanywa nini, hizi nywele zote hakuna mwenye itapeleka mtu yoyote mbinguni, hata kipara kama huyu elder wangu. Kama nywele na style of hair ingekuwa inapeleka watu mbinguni, hata kukosa nywele, mimi na elder hatungekuwa na haja hata ya kuja kanisani, kwa sababu hatuna hiyo nywele. So our teaching and the uplifting of this verse is for a given purpose which is completely misinterpreted. I said I want to start with what Peter is not saying. Then I will go to what Peter is saying in this verse. Let us, because I have also seen, I believe that it is your short hair that makes you holy and will take you to heaven. It will not. Let us read John chapter 12 verse 3. Mary therefore took a pound of ointment of pure nard, very precious, anointed the feet of Jesus, and wiped his feet with her hair. Was this short hair? Would Mary would have wiped Jesus' feet with short hair? No, I'm asking a question. If it is short hair that takes people to heaven, when Mary wiped Jesus' feet, was this short hair? Did Jesus condemn long hair after his feet was wiped? Because when we teach the word of God, we need to teach it in the spirit and in truth. In truth is what we honestly believe the Bible is saying. But not to pick a verse, translate it in our own way, because we want to make some laws. Let me finish with that. Now I want to go to Paul. And that's why I was saying, you must read the Bible in context. I want us to read very carefully from 1 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 3. And I want us to read it very carefully. But I want you to understand that the head of every man is Christ. The head of a woman is her husband. And the head of Christ is God. You have seen I have highlighted the word head. And that is why I admire this man called Paul. He was an intelligent guy. When Paul says, I am a Hebrew of the Hebrews, as to the law, I am a Pharisee, he was not bragging. Paul is an intelligent guy, learned in law. If you read any legal contract, you will find that what they start with, they define the words that are used adversely in the document. That is what Paul is doing in this verse. Paul first is defining the word head because he's preparing these people for something else up a chin. That's why I want us to follow what Paul is doing in this verse. Paul is writing to the Corinthians, and the church in Corinth is very different with the church in Galatia. In the church in Galatia, The predominant group is Gentiles and Jews. So the conflict there is so completely different. With the conflict that Paul is answering to in the church of Corinth. The church of Corinth is predominantly Jews. So there's a problem of hierarchy. How do they relate with their wives in the church? Now that's the problem here. And that's why you see him answering it so differently. See what he says. First, he defines the head. Then come to verse 5. But a woman who prays or prophesies with her head unveiled dishonors her head. So what does Paul say? If you don't cover your head, you are dishonoring your head. So who is the head? Sijui kama kanisa mnanifuata. Paul started by defining the head. So when he tells a woman that if you don't cover your head, you are dishonoring the head, which is who is being dishonored? Paul, naona ni kama unataka kunisaidia. Let me repeat so that you follow. Paul begins by saying, but I want you to understand that the head of every man is Christ. The head of every man is husband. But the head of Christ is God. So when a woman, now in verse 5, when a woman unveils, leaves her hair uncovered, she dishonors her head. So her head ni nani? It's the husband. Because that is what he has started by defining in verse 3. Why? Did Paul forget the word Christ or the word God? Why did he not say it dishonors God or Christ? Because Paul knows the answer is giving us nothing spiritual. Sio kama mnanifuata. Paul would have said, but a woman who prays or prophesies with her head unveiled dishonors Christ or God. Why did he not use those two words? Why is he using the word head, which in this context means husband? Because Paul knows the question is answering is not spiritual, it's answering a cultural question. For if a woman will not veil herself, then she should cut off her hair. But if it is disgraceful for a woman to be shorn or shaven, let her wear a veil. All these instructions have nothing spiritual in them. That is why Paul is so careful not to mention the word Christ or God. Because he knows the covering of your hair and all that is just a cultural practice. It has nothing spiritual. Let me go to verse 15. Does not nature itself teach you that for a man to wear long hair is degrading to himself? If you are a man and you just naturally had long hairs, would it be sin? Of course not. But if a woman has long hair, it is her pride. It's the simple. Who is saying that very long hair of the woman is her own pride? Why do you tell them that when it is cut short, that is now when your spirituality is higher, and that is what takes you to heaven? Well, it does not. Cutting your hair does not take you to any heaven. But if a woman has long hair, it is her pride. For her hair is given to her for a covering. When God completes creation, God says it is good. By the time God says it is good, had it made any kitambara na akamwekea Hawa? Did Hawa have any covering on her hair? God alipomaliza creation, alitengeneza kitambara kufunika kichwa ya Hawa. But he said it was good. You cover your hair if you want it. Paul is advising here because she's talking to a culture which believes in these things he's saying. And that is the conflict upon which he's writing this letter. And that is why Paul is not saying you are dishonoring Christ. You are not dishonoring God. You are dishonoring head. Because he knows what he's saying is not spiritual. It is a cultural thing. Now, I want to tell you something. And this is the part that you now see is the craziest. When you just pick these verses and say they are law. Colossians, sasa hii msome kwa Biblia yako. Usiseme mimi ndio nimeandika. 1 Corinthians chapter 14 verse 34. Sasa fungueni Biblia yenu msome hiyo. The women should keep silence in churches, for they are not permitted to speak, but should be subordinate as even the law says. Is that the gospel of Jesus? This is a letter Paul is writing. But what is he addressing? He's addressing the conflict within this particular church between the men and the women. So Paul is pacifying according to the culture. He's not saying this is the teaching of Jesus Christ. He's not saying this is the gospel. If there is anything they desire to know, let them ask their husbands at home. Sasa, huyu Efi akiwa na swali, atauliza nani na ana bwana? Ana bwana, atauliza nani? Mama wangu Obaji, akiwa na swali, atauliza nani na ni mjane? Is Paul saying that gospel of God is only for couples? No, I'm asking you, this is from the Bible. Because if we pick things just the way they are, let me ask you, see, Pastor Yusuf Mata is in that office. Why is it that these elders have not gone to remove him there? Because women are not supposed to speak in churches. You know, I'm asking, is he not a pastor? Does he preach in our churches? Does he hold meetings? But what is Paul saying? That they should be silent. If they have a question, they should go and ask their husbands. So if you picked this thing literally, the way it is written, would you be worshiping in truth? Because that is not what it means. Paul is addressing a cultural situation in the church of the Corinth. Now, if I want you to see why I admire this guy, Galatians 3:28, it's the same person writing it. Now I want to see the conflict between the verses up and that verse. Galatians 3:28. What is now writing? Now to the Galatians who do not have a cultural conflict. He's telling them, there is neither a Jew nor a Greek. There is neither slave nor free. There is neither male nor female. He's not saying they are subordinate anymore. Now he's writing to the Galatians. Because the question he's addressing is completely different. For you are all one in Jesus Christ. Those 3 verses, those 4 verses are written by the same man called Paul. And you can see how different they are in the answers he's giving. Because they're addressing very different situations. Nimeenda sana. Sasa nitamalizia na ile wimbo yetu. Inaimba tu wimbo moja, then nitauliza swali. Ile wimbo yetu ilikuwa inasema, unisafishe Mwokozi, ndani na nje kwa moto, utakavyo, ili dhambi ife kwangu. See, that's the wimbo. Kazi kubwa yao wanaume, badala ya kusimama kule nje kuangalia vitu ndogo ndogo ya wakina mama, nywele, kucha, pua, kazi kubwa ni kuwaombea wakina mama au kina kwaya wenye wanasumbukana hapa na pita. Hao watu waombewe, wasafishwe ndani na nje kwa moto wa nani? Wa Yesu. Na sio vile wanataka, utakavyo wewe Yesu. Hivyo ndio wimbo unasema. Waoshwe ndani na nje vile Yesu anataka. Na wakioshwa hivyo, kutakuwa na haja ya mtu kukaa kule nje ati anaangalia kucha ya wakina mama. Ninauliza, hawa wakina mama yenye tunasumbuana nayo, kichwa, nywele, wakioshwa ndani na nje kwa moto ya Yesu, sio vile wanataka, sio vile wanaume wanataka, waoshwe vile Yesu anataka, kutakuwa na shida. Mnanisikia kweli? Na kina mama mkienda nyumbani, waombea hao wakina baba waoshwe ndani na nje, lakini sana sana ndani. Wawache mambo madogo madogo ya kucha na nywele. Sio kubwa ni kuombea wakina mama waoshwe ndani na wapi? Na nje. Hakutakuwa na haja yoyote ya mtu kusimama pale nje kuangalia kucha, macho, pua, nini. Hawatakuwa na haja. Ndugu yangu, ulikuwa na swali?
Happy Sabbath and happy day. My car remained in Nairobi with my Bible, so I don't have my Bible. So someone will read for me or project for me. Because I have a question built around just your presentation, and thank you very much for that presentation. Please project for me 28:10 of Isaiah. I pray that you started from 9, 10 to 13, but start from 9. Something I'm building from 9. 28, start from 9 and then 10, up to 13. There's something we are getting from there. If someone has it, can even read, it may go faster. 9, eh? Please give him mic so that we go in same direction.
Mic 2, 1 check.
Thank you. Isaiah 28:9 says,
Yes.
Whom shall he teach knowledge?
Yes.
And whom shall he make to understand doctrine?
Yes.
Them that are weaned
Yes.
from the milk
Yes.
and drawn from the breast.
Very mature adults, right?
Yes.
Then how do we teach them? Verse 10.
It is for precept must be upon precept.
Precepts must be upon precepts.
Precept upon precept.
Precepts again upon precepts.
Line upon line.
You must read it upon line and line.
Line upon line.
Line must come with line.
Here a little.
You pick from verse 1.
And there a little.
You pick in John.
For with
And you pick in Revelation. Continue.
Or with stammering lips
with stammering lips
and tongue
and tongue,
will he speak to his people.
will God speak to his people from a little here, a little there. You pick in Revelation, you pick in John, you pick in things, because Bible speaks in totality. And remember, in verse 9, the Bible is talking about this is how we impact knowledge and doctrine to the people or of God. And let me now come to where I'm coming from, the choir, when he's saying, now how will adorning and salvation not take you to heaven? I agree, 100%. But 6:1, give me 6:1 Romans. So that I come to the part that I am in full agreement that it is true that how you sit, how you eat, how you drink has no problem with how you relate to heaven. But give me 6:1 Romans.
6:1 says,
Yes.
what shall we say then?
What shall we now say then?
Shall we continue in sin
Shall we now continue in sin
that grace may abound?
so that Christ's blood now washes us? Continue.
2 says,
Yes.
God forbid.
God forbid.
How shall we that are dead to sin
How shall we that are now dead in sin
live any longer therein?
live any longer therein? And then let me come bring it to choir. Should you now practice things that are not true or are not recommended or are not as per our doctrine? Because remember, 28:9 is talking about teaching of doctrine, right? Teaching of doctrine, teaching of redemption, teaching of salvation, teaching of knowledge are all different, because the Bible records that the Bible is given to you for rebuke, for guidance, and for doctrine. In fact, the Bible also teaches doctrine to his people. Remember, the moment you become part of the choir, it was not just a joke. It was a people that were identified to do a particular role. Numbers chapter 3, verse 8. A choir were just not people. They were just not people who were coming to the temple for worship. Their role was a sacred role. Numbers 3, verse 8. Numbers 3:8.
3:8 says,
Yes.
and they shall keep the instruments of the tabernacle.
Start from verse 2.
3:2.
Yeah, 3:2.
2 says,
Yes.
and these are the names of the sons of Aaron,
Sons of Aaron.
Nadab, the
Yes.
firstborn,
Yes.
and Abihu,
Yes.
Eleazar,
Yes.
and Ithamar.
Yes.
These are the names of sons of Aaron the priest,
Yes.
which were anointed,
Yes.
whom he consecrated to minister in the priest's
God
office.
consecrated them to minister in the priest. Verse 3 will tell us what were they supposed to do.
Verse
3. Verse 8 now, sorry.
verse 8.
Yes.
And they shall keep all instruments
And they
of
shall
the
keep
tabernacle
all instruments of the tabernacle
of the congregation
of the congregation
and the charge of the children
and the charge of the children.
of Israel.
Remember when the Bible is talking about instruments, it's talking about singers, right? That these were people, the verse that you read back says, these were people that are now becoming consecrated to the whole purpose of the service of God. And they were supposed to be Levites of the tribe of the Levi, consecrated in the service of God. There was a way these people were supposed to behave. There was a way these people were supposed to dress. There was a way these people were supposed to adorn. And should that not happen, there were even consequences. If you read verse 3, chapter 3, verse 2, you realize that the Bible is even talking about sons of who was consumed by fire, died without children because of doing certain strange things within the temple. My question would be is, anybody that have identified himself to be a choir member, it was a service to God. You are a person that has consecrated himself into that service. Then the Bible now asks, how are these people supposed to behave? They were supposed to behave like the Levites. My conclusion is that these people were supposed to behave like the Levites, because the Levites' functions were supposed to sing in the church. And if these people were supposed to behave as Levites, should they now dress differently but identify as Levites? Let's come contemporary. Why are we dressing? When I go to work, I dress in a tie and a suit and a coat. Actually, if I don't have a coat, I should not enter my boss's office. Why? It is that dress code that identified my work, right? What that comes? It comes the doctrine of the place that I work in, right? Then I'm also wondering is, in service of God, in terms of singing, were there doctrines that were sent to the children of Israel to follow? Were there doctrines of people that were given to the Levites? Because those are the people that are appointed to sing in the church. So should you now stop following the doctrines of the Levites, but still sing? No.
Yeah, I'm very happy with my friend. In politics, we'll call it rhetoric. Why would you call it rhetoric? Because there's no specific verse. He has mentioned that says a woman should not dress in fine clothing. He has talked about so much, about doctrines, but he has not mentioned a specific verse that says a woman should not dress in fine clothing. I call it rhetoric. Politics will call it rhetoric. Because you say so much about doctrine. That is where he began. When Jesus tells the Samaritan woman, there comes a time that doctrines will not matter. They believe that you are worshiping on Mount Gerizim is a doctrine. They believe that we worship in Mount Zion as Jews is a doctrine. Jesus is telling the Samaritan woman, a time has come that doctrines won't matter. What will matter is the worship of the Father in spirit and in truth.
Happy Sabbath. Happy day. Elder, one thing I must give up to you is that the passion that you prosecute with your teachings, it's very good and it's necessary for our spiritual growth. And that will bring us, are you now in a cult? Anyway, that is rhetorical. I agree with you, it's rhetorical. But I agree with most of your teachings, but I do not agree with some of them because you give them, you clothe them with I don't care attitude, which I don't think our salvation should be. And I'm going to give you verses, now that you're talking of verses. Let us start with Genesis 35, from verse 2 to verse 5, to verse 4. Okay, they're not projecting, so I'll read. Now, this one is Jacob. He is going to go before God. And he's talking to his household. He says this in verse 2. Then Jacob said unto his household, and to all that were with him, put away the strange gods that are among you, and be clean and change your garments. And let us arise and go up to Bethel, and I will make there an altar unto God, who answered me in the days of my distress, and was with me in the way which I went. And they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods which were in their hands, and all their earrings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. Why was it necessary for them to take all this ornament while they were going before God? If you can deck yourself the way you want. And I'll finish and I'll give you, let me just prosecute, then I'll give you to rebut. I love it that way, so that you don't interfere with my yes. So, with I've just it says this, verse 4 says, and they gave unto Jacob all the strange gods which were in their hands, and all their earrings which were in their ears, and Jacob hid them under the oak which was by Shechem. Because of time, I'll leave that verse, but I want to open another verse. Let us go to the book of Ezekiel. He just spoke about it, here a little, there a little. That is the only way to establish a truth. And you said, our problem is we take a verse and run with it, and that is what makes us a cult. So for us to prove that we're not a cult, we must take here a little, there a little, so that we make the doctrine stand. Is that not your teaching? Yes, so let us go with it. Ezekiel 23, from verse 38 and 40. What is gold and what is gold and what is silver or whatever call it? The Bible calls them as ornament. God made them because God made everything. But let us hear what God is saying in Ezekiel from verse from 23 from verse 38 to 40. Is that King James Version, right? I can read from there. Moreover, this they have done unto me. They have defiled my sanctuary in the same day and have profaned my Sabbaths. For when they had slain their children to their idols, they came the same day into my sanctuary to profane it. And lo, thus said, they have done in the midst of my fine house. 40. And furthermore, that ye have sent men, you've sent for men to come from far, and to whom a messenger was sent. And lo, they came, for whom thou didst wash thyself, painted thy eyes, and decked thyself with ornaments in the house of the Lord. What is God saying about that? Is he happy with that? I'll leave it while giving it up to you, and look at the image that is painted of the woman in Revelation verse 12 and the Babylon woman. Look at the description that is given. Because of time, I don't want to go into that. The Babylonian woman who will lead the whole world into sin is portrayed as decked with gold, with ornaments, and every other thing, and sits on an animal that is people are following him. But what is the description that is given unto that woman in Revelation verse 12? Please let us open Revelation 12. And there it is. A great wonder appeared in heaven, clothed in the sun and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, was travailing in birth and pained to be delivered. Look at the simple description of that woman. It is apart from her clothing. I've not seen a golden raiment. I've not seen ornaments that are speaking about that should be allowed in the house of God. But all I'm saying is this. Like what my preacher has said, what my presenter has said. You putting on, what is the reason for putting on? I think we need more time so that we can deal with each and every allegation that you allay one by one. You've thrown a blanket over a big gap. I agree with you when Paul is speaking to Peter and the rest about circumcision, how it cannot save us and all that. But that does not mean that everything that we come with unto the house of God should be allowed. We cannot open that door. Sister Watt says, I know you don't like her, but she says this. But she says this. There is a need for dress reform so that our daughters and our sons can come to before the house of God and give a worship that is acceptable to God. There is a reason why she's saying that, and there's a reason why she's advocating for dress reforms. Us opening our doors for everyone to come the way it is, it will just be another Babylon. Lastly, why do people think that we are a cult? People think that we are a cult because we try to live to the standard that the Bible has given, which many people do not want. I'll leave it at that. If time will allow, we can discuss more. Thank you.
Because I cannot answer him, he has also spoken a lot of rhetoric. I will say that because I have not seen a specific verse that says a woman should not dress in fine clothing. You will bring them. You also said so much, but I didn't get a specific answer. So let me conclude. I was born in a Seventh-day family. My father died last year at 86. Our family had two simple instructions. From our childhood to now, ninazeeka. When you go to church, there were only two instructions about clothing and hair. Your clothing needed to be neat. That was the first instruction. Number two, they need to be presentable. There were only two. And that is what has led us in the faith of the Seventh-day Adventist. Today, our father died with the same two rules. Our hair, inywele, was the same rule for both of us men and wasichana. Mama Prince, we utawauliza. Bababu unawajua. The rules were two. Ukienda kanisani, your hair needs to be combed. Atakwambia Tom, huwezi enda namna hiyo, chukua kichano, uweke kwa nywele. And that was the end. There was no any other rule. Hizi mingi yenye tumeleta, mimi ningeomba kwayo wakikaa chini. Watowe hiyo ya Peter which they do not know how to interpret. Waweke hii ya Yesu. Hii verse ya Yesu inasema, all human beings are worth of being dressed neatly in more glory than Solomon. Number two, it gives you an assurance that clothing, Jesus himself will provide it. But I know the firing squad in choir will not want to replace it. Because within that one of years, there are no clauses of persecution. Tungekuwa na document that we can revise during the year. Unaweza weka hiyo karatasi karibu na kitanda yako, ureverse because it is inspirational. It tells you don't worry about clothing. Jesus will give you better. Hii ingine, when you want isoma ni firing squad. Na wana revise when they are planning to persecute somebody. Na Mungu awabariki.
Bwana sifiwe. Anakaribisha PM. Tusimame. We are praying. Our Father in God, who dwells above in heaven, we have learned from thy word, O Lord. And how pray that things that you've said that are not according to thy will, O Lord, I pray that may you make them truth unto us, O Lord. As we are learning each and every day, O Lord, I pray that each and every study that we bring forth unto thee, O Lord, may you make us understand each and every time, O Lord. Make the learning that we are doing here, Lord, not go in vain, but make us to spread thy word out to the people who have not known you, Lord. As we are in the Holy Sabbath, may you continue being in our midst till the end. That's my humble prayer, trusting and believing. Just in my pray. Amen. Asante.
Happy Sabbath. The Lord is good. Bwana Yesu asifiwe. Children of God, Christ is coming soon. Amen? Where will you be found? Christ is coming soon. And there's, the dividing line is going to separate us. That is my parting shot this afternoon. Yesu yuaja hivi karibuni. Na kuna mpaka. Si Bwana aweze kutubariki. Where will you be found? Where will you be found? In the world? Ama ukiwa umesimama ndani ya Yesu? Ni time ya departmentals. Naomba